There's a manager I've been coaching, let's call him Peter, and he rang me up not long ago, and he really was in quite a state. He said that he was stuck, really. He was just loaded down with things to do, things that his department had got to do. But he felt that there was no real way of getting through it all, and that feeling of overload and of just too much stuff to do was really holding him back. And I asked him to explain a little bit what it was that was holding him back, and there were three things he felt that were holding him back. He said that he felt he had no support from his boss and from the senior executives in the business. He was struggling because some of his peers, his colleagues supposedly on the same side, were not helping him, not sharing resources, not sharing people to get projects done on time. And he also felt that some of his own team, some of his subordinates were attacking him openly in meetings and disagreeing with him, even in front of the bosses, in front of the senior executives that he was working with. He said, actually, it feels like I've got the forces of evil lining up against me. Now, I think, and I said to him that I felt maybe he'd got things a little bit out of proportion, that not everyone was against him, but certainly that was how he felt about it. And I asked him, what he was planning to do about it, and he really struggled to come up with some ideas. He really wasn't sure how to deal with the immense overload that he felt. He didn't know where to start. So I pushed him, and finally he came up with some options, some things to do, and all of those would have been fine. But I think that he missed some critical options that would get an enormous weight off his mind and off his plate of things to do. I think he'd missed some important options, and I think I know why he missed them out. He wanted to avoid some of the confrontations and conflicts that he faced. And I put to him that the thing that he could do that would have the biggest impact, the quickest impact, and that would get him known for tackling quite challenging issues was that if he were to engage, if he was to tackle the uncomfortable conversations in his life. And this, I think, is an important tactic. It's something actually that I learned when I was doing my business degree, my MBA, from a guy called Professor Cliff Bowman. Actually, he was quite an introverted man, but in the class you'd never know it. He was always engaging and full of energy and describing things to do. And he coined this phrase. He said that the thing to do if you want to break through and get things done is to go into the zone of uncomfortable debate. And you probably have an uncomfortable debate or a zone of uncomfortable debate in your business too. It's a place where you don't want to go, really. It's uncomfortable because there are things like, I don't know, the CEO's pet project isn't going very well and nobody will say so. It's a place where you don't want to rock the boat. There's a manager in your department and nothing is getting done, or the division is failing and we know it's his fault but nobody's going to say it, or her fault. In a comfortable debate, Cliff expressed this really well. In a comfortable debate, budget meetings, meetings where you know exactly what's going to happen in the meeting, and as a result, nothing happens after the meeting either. That's the zone of comfortable debate. Nothing happens. And it occurred to me, nothing happens when you're in a comfortable conversation. Yeah, you're expecting it. It's completely as you'd expect. And I've started to explore this myself in my own research over the last 10 years or so. And in fact, we published our first leadership book, Leadership Unplugged, was about comfortable and uncomfortable conversations. So I think if you're struggling I'm sure you're not struggling with as much as Peter has to struggle with, but if you're struggling and you're not sure what to tackle first, then I urge you, tackle the uncomfortable conversations. Where are these uncomfortable conversations? Well, I want you to think about your three main groups of relationships. You've got your relationship with your boss and the senior executives in your business. And you've got your relationship with your peers, the colleagues, the people who are with you trying to get things done. And you also have your team, the people working for you, your subordinates, if you like. And in each of those three areas, it's possible, probable, that there are uncomfortable conversations, things that you're not quite sure how to tackle or not quite sure whether you should tackle them. But the thing is, you know what they are. I mean, probably as I've been talking about this idea, this concept of the uncomfortable conversations, there have been in your head, a little agenda has been forming. Some of the things that you know you ought to deal with, you know you ought to talk about with the boss. Some of the things, the conversations you know you ought to be having with the peers and the colleagues working with you. And also some of the conversations you know you should be having with your team, with the people working for you. That's the fact. The amazing fact about uncomfortable conversations is we all know what they are. You know, if you're around the water cooler talking with your colleagues, your friends, if you're back at home talking with your life partner or your friends about what it's like to work at your workplace, you know what the uncomfortable conversations are. If you asked people to spell out what are the uncomfortable conversations. Obviously, you wouldn't use that terminology, you wouldn't use that phrase, but if you ask people to describe what it's like to work at your workplace or in your team, these are the things that they say in the bar, in the coffee bar, around the water cooler after work. So, if you want to get things done, and actually if you want to get things done quickly, I urge you, tackle the uncomfortable conversations. What is it that you need to address to get out into the open with your senior executives, with your boss? Go and talk to the boss about those things. Boss, for us to be able to achieve what it is we want to achieve, I think we need to discuss a couple of things. And as long as you're focused on what you both want to achieve, what you want to achieve for the business, what you want to achieve for the team, then I think you'll get airtime to talk about those things. So I urge you, tackle the uncomfortable conversations. Here's a starting point. List the people that you need to have these conversations with. Prioritize those. What order do you have these conversations in? And pick an easy one to start with. Somebody that you think is kind of borderline, that you know you can get on with usually, but you're not quite sure about this particular issue. I urge you, tackle the uncomfortable conversations. Identify who you need to speak to, prioritize those conversations, pick the top three and have those conversations in the next week. What's fascinating is that the world's best leaders are brilliant at tackling the uncomfortable conversations. They're very assertive about that. They tackle those uncomfortable conversations. So if you want to get more done, if you want to get more done faster, and interestingly, if you want to get noticed, if you want to increase your visibility, tackle the uncomfortable conversations. It will work for you.